Hello and welcome back to yet another episode of Not Overthinking. Timo, how are you doing today?
Doing pretty well. Coming back from dinner with some friends.
What kind of friends?
Internet friends, I think.
Internet friends? Wow, thank you for the
I
invite.
think we connected over email a very long time ago. I think early days with Causal. I think this guy came across Causal in the early days, and then we'd connected over email. And then he was in London last year or something. We just missed each other. And then when I was in New York a few months ago, then we did actually manage to hang out. And then he was back in London for a bit, and now we got dinner with the wives.
With the wives?
With the wives.
It was like a double date.
Double date, mate. Exactly.
Oh, nice. I went on a double date yesterday. It's quite
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Here's the thing. Here's the thing about double dates.
Yeah, what do you reckon?
I think I'm getting used to the concept, but I definitely in the early days I found it really cringe.
Why was a double date cringe?
I find it less cringe now. But it's just
because you're married.
No, I think just because I've been on a bunch, but I think it's just
You've been on a bunch of double dates.
I mean, yeah.
Oh, okay.
I mean, you just a couple having dinner with another couple. That's what I mean by double date.
Okay, fine.
Oh yeah, we were hanging out with some friends. We were hanging out with some friends yesterday, and this friend is from the EA community, right?
EA as in
the effective altruism community.
effective altruism.
And there's a lot of overlap between the effective altruism community and tech people, tech bros, Bay Area, all this kind of stuff. To the extent that we said, I think we told her yesterday we're going on a double date tomorrow or something, and she was initially her instinctive reaction was just shocked, shocked, and not in a great way. And then she was like, "Oh yeah, I keep having to remind myself, but that a double date is not when a man goes on a date with two women." Because of the whole polyamory thing,
Yeah.
in certain communities.
You just assumed the double date was...
Double date. It was guy going on a
So
one person going on a date
when
with
you
two
said that
people.
you and Lucia were going on a double date,
Yeah.
her
Yeah.
initial reaction was okay.
Yeah, exactly. She didn't know.
Sounds like she was quite judgmental about this.
Didn't know about this any side chicks. No, I thought that was a funny little tidbit. But yeah,
That's good.
Had a couple's dinner this evening.
Excellent.
Which was nice. Yeah. How about you?
What have I been doing today? We wrapped up our cohort 6 of the Part-Time YouTuber Academy.
Oh yeah.
So
was it a good cohort?
Yeah, I think it was a pretty solid cohort. So if anyone fancies joining the waiting list for the next one, that'll be in November time or something.
Are
like
you
that.
seeing any trends in the up and coming wannabe creators over the past 6 cohorts? 6 cohorts
yes.
is that 2 years or 3 years?
It's almost 2 years. Yeah. Yes. The ones that succeed are the ones that stay consistent. Very few people actually stay consistent.
Even after they shell out the money for the course.
Oh God, yeah. Even after they
Really?
especially after they shut down.
What's the rate of consistent uploading post course?
Oh, so we're actually going to dig into that data in the next few months. Anecdotally, I would be surprised if 20% of our intake actually stayed. In fact, I would be surprised if 5% of our intake stayed consistent.
5%.
I'd be surprised if 1 in 20 people. So we've had about 2,300 people through the cohort.
Yeah.
I would be surprised if more than 100 actually were consistent, have stayed consistent since taking the cohort.
And at the start of the course, how many? If you asked everyone a question along these lines, how many people would say for how many people is this course a speculative thing of oh yeah, let's just check it out? And for how many people is it going into the course they're I know I want to do this. I want to
Yeah, so when we poll people at the start, we ask people, how many of you have a casual relationship with YouTube and how many of you have a serious relationship with YouTube? All of them say serious relationship, 100%, basically. We then ask, on the scale of 0 to 10, where 0 is I'm treating YouTube as a hobby and 10 is I'm treating YouTube as a business.
Yeah.
What number are you?
Yeah.
Basically, everyone says 10, and we have a few people that are sort of somewhere in the 5 to 9 range.
Okay.
And so I think everyone goes into the course thinking that I want to take YouTube seriously and I want to treat it like a business.
Yeah.
And then reality hits them in the face when they realize actually publishing a video a week is actually quite hard. And it's not an easy thing to do. And especially the people who are complete beginners who some of them thrive, but some of them kind of die realizing actually speaking to a camera is kind of hard and I have to think about camera gear and production value and editing, and it's just a very steep learning curve.
Yeah.
And the people that are not immediately very tech savvy, or the people that are not hell yeah, I want to learn something new, I find and also the people that are overthinkers or very anxious types or get in their heads a lot, there's so many barriers that stop people from putting themselves out there on YouTube.
Yeah, sure.
And then once they've made that first video, there are so many that stop them from staying consistent.
Yeah.
So like, I really can't blame people for not being consistent with it.
Yeah.
It's like with Peloton. There's that thing of like most people that buy Peloton don't even unbox it.
Oh wait, is that a thing?
I don't know if it's apocryphal or if it's like actually true.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people buy products like this as a vote for the sort of person that they want to be.
Yeah. That's like me with iPads. Every iPad I've ever bought has been a vote for the person I want to be.
I want to be the sort of writer that writes on an iPad when I'm on a train, kind of vibe.
Yeah,
Is that your
it'll be
jam?
my writing device. Yeah, I'll just write every morning. I'll do my
Exactly.
iPad
And
journal.
then it gathers dust.
Yeah, mate. Haven't touched it.
So yeah.
Okay. Are the niches changing that people want to like go into? Like 2 years ago, was it all about like freaking Rome and Notion, and now it's about like, I don't know, not note taking apps. Like, what's the
I would say more than half the cohort wants to be a self-help guru.
really?
Yeah. Because
It's just generally applicable. Like
exactly.
everyone, like
every industry trends towards self-help guru eventually.
right? Yeah.
Broadly, like realistically, there are very few people that are actually going to succeed as self-help gurus because it's such a crowded space. But we've seen someone succeed like really well in the realm of like fashion and sort of fashion advice for different body styles and analyzing like, hey, let's analyze what Kate Moss wore at this event and stuff. So she's done super well. We've got a chap called John Coogan, in fact, who is the founder of Soylent, who sold Soylent and then decided to become a YouTuber. And he does like startup analyses, but here's what's happening in Zuck's metaverse. Here's what's happening. Here's why this startup failed. And his stuff is sick.
Yeah.
But he's got a whole team behind it, editing, production. He's absolutely on point.
Yeah.
He must be stupidly rich as well because he sold Soylent.
Yeah.
So he has the money to throw at the problem. And we've had a few other people who've like succeeded. A couple of personal finance-y type people.
Yeah.
We had a good chap called Matt who was trying to be sort of the personal finance guy in the UK because it's actually a fairly untapped market in the UK. So he's been very consistent for the last 2 years, making videos about buying and flipping houses and stuff.
Yeah.
So people in those sorts of niches where they have a little bit of an unfair advantage or are inherently interested in the topic.
Yeah.
And their videos are
Not meta level topics, but like
not like meta level topics about here's how you be productive.
Yeah. Or like,
Because realistically, it's really hard for people to succeed in that space.
yeah.
But everyone still wants to. And people are always like, and it's always going to happen, right? Like the sorts of people that vibe with my stuff are the sorts of people that are interested in productivity and self-help and like tech, and when they're like, hey, so what we do an exercise in week 1 of the course, trying to figure out what your niche is. And it's like one of the exercises, like, what are all the things you're passionate about? Yeah. And a lot of people list fairly overlapping things just by virtue of the fact that that's
yeah.
It's like, it's really hard to succeed as a productivity YouTuber these days. Like, I really honestly would not recommend it unless you have so many unfair advantages stacked up that you can feasibly compete in that market. Yeah. So, but it's fun to do. And this time around was only 5 weeks rather than 6 weeks, and it just made such a huge difference. Yeah. That, shortening it by a week.
I'm just thinking, like, maybe there's different formats you could do here. I'm just imagining, like, the cohort all arrives. They all want to be productivity gurus. I mean, you could do something like like The Bachelor, where there's like this 30 wannabe productivity YouTubers, and then
who's the best productivity,
and then
they get voted off. Yeah. How would you explain Parkinson's law? Go. What's your typing speed? Those sorts of challenges.
Yeah. What's chapter number 4 in the 4-hour work week?
Exactly. Yeah. What are the 5 steps in getting things done?
Yeah. What are the 7 habits of highly effective people?
Oh yeah, I wouldn't be able to answer that.
I love it.
I actually had a great podcast with Cal Newport. Today.
Oh, nice. He was on your pod.
He was on my pod.
Nice, man.
Yeah, mate. Cal Newport's a big name in the world. Yeah. We kind of spent the first half an hour of the conversation just me being very self-indulgent because basically just asking him what his career and life is like.
He's the deep work guy, right?
He's the deep work guy. Yeah. Because in the past when I've been
remote
thinking,
or IRL?
No, it was remote, sadly, but reasonable. In the past when I've been thinking about what I want to do with my life, I always think about Cal Newport as being like the guy who seems to have cracked the code. Okay. In that he is, computer science professor at like Georgetown University, a tenured professor.
Is he? I didn't know that.
Yeah, he's like a proper I think he did his PhD from like MIT, where in like maths or something, where his job was to write proofs. and stuff. And then as he was at university, he started doing blog posts about like effective studying, evidence-based kind of stuff. He's written 7 books so far. I see the New York Times bestseller. He's done all of the things that you're supposed to do,
right?
And is now getting into like doing a podcast and stuff, and writes for the New Yorker and the New York Times and the Guardian, and has all of the traditional old world prestige credentials, while also being a kind of internet influencer, I guess.
Okay. But does he have a blog? He posts on his blog and stuff?
Yeah, his blog is studyhacks.com. Has been a thing since like 2007.
Studyhacks.com.
Yeah, he was like the OG study tips guy.
Wow.
Giving evidence-based study tips. Huh?
How old is this guy?
He's like 40.
Okay.
Yeah, he started like at the age of 21 when he was at university.
Yeah.
But his career always seemed to me to be like pretty ideal because he's like, tenured professor and does this teaching stuff. And then on the side, he writes the books and does the blog posts and things. That always felt to me like that feels like a pretty solid place to be. Yeah. And so I was basically just sort of quizzing him about what that is like. Like he and I have fairly similar experiences in that we are both in, well, he is in a traditional kind of prestigious field. Right. In his case, academia, in my case, medicine.
Yeah.
And found this sort of side hustle career as like a writer / content creator in the world of productivity.
Yeah.
And then became known as like productivity guru somewhat accidentally through giving study tips.
Okay. Yeah.
And then both of us were sort of discussing how it felt to grapple with that decision of to what extent do I do the thing that I'm truly passionate about, which is teaching and writing and reading about cool ideas.
Yeah.
Versus doing the thing that actually has elements of prestige associated with it, i.e. being a doctor and being a professor.
Right.
And he was talking about how, other sort of people and I guess his sort of genre, like Ryan Holiday and the Mark Mansons of the world, even though they've sold millions and millions of copies, like the New Yorker or the New York Times won't even take a phone call from them because they don't have any markers of prestige.
Okay. Right.
Whereas Cal Newport writes in the New Yorker all the time.
Yeah.
And he said as soon as he started leaning into his academic credentials, suddenly he started getting all these like opportunities at like New York Times and NPR and The Guardian and all these people that actually care about credentials. And so it's a bit of a, he was saying that it was kind of like, it's an easier decision for me because medicine is so removed from the thing that I was doing.
Yeah.
Whereas for him, the stuff that he now researches, a lot of it is about as like sort of the harmful effects of technology and stuff.
Okay, sure, yeah.
Which is the same as the stuff he writes about.
Yeah.
And so the two are sort of intertwined. And so we were talking a lot about like how you figure out this balance between the life you want to live yourself versus the social status, prestige, acquisition of accolades kind of vibe.
Right. It
was great stuff.
I feel like you often talk about this thing, but like being a YouTuber and being a content creator is highly prestigious nowadays.
Oh, it's really not.
What?
If you ask kids, it is, yeah. But it's absolutely not from like an old world elite prestigious.
Yeah. Not from the old world.
Yeah, so that's what I mean.
Oh, that's what you mean. Okay. Yeah.
Although he was saying that at a party, if someone asks what you do and you say you're a writer, that's more high status than being a professor, because writer
there's an element of freedom.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's like, oh, so wait, if you're making a living from doing that, then you must be interesting.
Right. Yeah.
So that was a good chat.
Nice.
Yeah. It's a pretty good day all around. PTY Cohort 6 wrapped up. Podcast with Cal Newport. Did some writing this morning. Had a haircut. But yeah, life is just generally pretty reasonable.
Excellent.
Yeah. I think that's a pod. That's it.
Right.
I have been listening to an absolutely fantastic audiobook. It's called The Surrender Experiment by Mickey someone. The Surrender Experiment.
Yeah.
The chap was also written, I think his more well-known book is called The Untethered Soul.
Oh,
which is a title that you would also
mate,
enjoy.
Sounds great, bro.
Yeah, mate, this guy's sick.
Yeah.
I'm only like halfway through the book right now, so it's like, but so the Untethered Soul, I think, is one of these like spiritual Power of Now Eckhart Tolle type books.
Okay, yeah.
But what's this one? The Surrender Experiment.
Yeah.
Is basically his life story.
Okay.
And his whole, like at the age of 23, he was like doing his economics degree or something like that.
Yeah.
And he tells a story of one day he was sitting next to his brother-in-law or something, and he found that there was a silence and there was an awkward silence, and he was like thinking, what do I say next to kind of break this awkward silence?
Yeah.
And then he realized in that moment that, wait a minute, like if I'm thinking, what do I say next?
Yeah.
Then who is doing the thinking? Like, where there's this voice in my head that's like,
sure.
Yeah, trying to figure out what to say next. It's like,
yeah.
where the hell is that voice coming from?
Yeah.
And so the whole book is basically, and his whole life at that point is like but just becoming obsessed with figuring out the answer to this question of what the hell is this voice and where is it coming from?
Yeah.
And that takes him down the realm of like Zen Buddhism. It takes him into sort of Eastern philosophy, into yoga, into meditation, into kind of, and it is just a freaking incredible story
Really?
where it's like every single chapter I would just like, oh my God.
Really?
And it's like
oh my God, just because it's a mental story, because there's some like life insight or something.
Mostly because it's a mental story, but also because like some of the experiences that he has, like his whole thing was basically he decided, you know, after a couple of years of doing the meditation stuff, that he was going to do an experiment where he just surrendered to the flow of life.
Yeah.
And he's not like trying to, you know, there's that adage in Zen Buddhism that if you try to aim, you're going to miss, or something like that. It's just like he's not going to. He's just going to surrender to the flow of life. He's just going to live in the woods. He like lived in a van for like a year and a half, just like chilling and meditating, and would just sort of let the flow of life take him. And he made a rule for himself that he has to surrender.
Yeah.
And he has to basically say yes to opportunities that come his way and things.
Okay.
And broadly, just like the sequence of random coincidences that happens, he ends up becoming CEO of like a $1 billion medical software company.
Right.
And he's just like at every step is just flabbergasted as to how life is going. And he's, well, you know, like this is happening to me. I have to surrender.
Yeah.
While at the same time keeping up his spiritual practices, ends up like leading this sort of temple spiritual community, and meeting all these like yoga masters from India who are visiting. I think he's in like Florida or something.
Yeah.
And some of the experiences that he recounts when being visited by these yoga masters, it's like one of them sort of touches his forehead in the spot that he feels like this, the idea of the third eye, which is spirituality, and he feels this like freaking like incredible sense of like being pulled out of his body, like he's in a tornado, and the guy touches him again, and the feeling completely goes away. And he's just like, bloody hell, what the hell just happened?
That's sick.
And it's just sick. So part of me was like, as I was listening to this, was like, come on, this must be BS. But another part, like the bigger part of me, was like, no, this is clearly not. Like, there's definitely something here to all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And the fact that like these yoga masters have been a thing for like thousands and thousands of years.
Yeah.
There's like something there.
Yeah.
And it like makes me really keen to want to explore that kind of area.
Dude,
of life more.
I was thinking, so I bought this book after you tweeted about it, like today or something. I like bought the audiobook. I started listening to it. I haven't gone through much of it. And yeah, I think as I started listening to it, I was thinking like, man, I really want to meet someone who's like up the spiritual path, because I think basically, and like I have friends who've like, you know, personally met people who are like up the spiritual path, and the general consensus seems to be like that there, like, you can't really describe it, but you do feel it.
Yeah, exactly.
When you're in their presence, like you do feel this thing.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, he describes this a lot in the book.
This is across, you know, there's many paths up the mountain, etc., etc. This is across, you know, whether you, like, there's many paths to God or whatever you want to call it. But like people do consistently seem to have this experience of like, if you meet the sage of whatever discipline, tradition, you know, whatever like spiritual path, if you meet one of these sages on any of these paths, like there is something special there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was thinking like, man, I want to go to India and meet like some, like some yogis and stuff.
Yeah, mate, it's insane.
Yeah.
So I want to, like, I've sort of been dipping my toes into, like, we had an episode about Kapil Gupta's stuff. We had an episode where we talked about some of the sort of, I think, some of the highlights that I did from The Power of Now. And it's like, I feel like I'm sort of slowly dipping my toes into this sort of spiritual waters, as it were. But yeah, keen to try things like, you know, meditation retreat, or like potentially even the psychedelic stuff at some point.
Yeah.
I was listening to a Sam Harris episode, and he was talking about, you know, like a lot of people say with psychedelics, it's like sort of getting a helicopter to the top of the mountain.
Right.
And then you, like, even though that experience doesn't last generally,
you've had a glimpse.
And now you know, okay, that's the destination I'm trying to get to. Okay, cool. What's the path? Basically, the answer is meditation, or
some kind of spiritual practice,
And it's just sick. It's just like,
yeah.
I feel like there's this whole like plane of life that I've just never experienced.
Yeah.
And I think even maybe a year ago, if someone had told me like the word spirituality, I'd have been like, what the hell is that? Like, I used to come across the word spirituality and I just didn't really know what the hell are people talking about?
I just
just like, what the hell is this shit?
Like, it was like, woo.
Yeah.
Mate,
some serious stuff. I've been recommending this book to everyone I meet.
Mate, when the student is ready, the master appears.
Exactly, mate.
Yeah.
So Kapil Gupta's listening to this.
If for those of you not in the know, this do you want to explain the reference?
For those of you not in the know, there's a chap called Kapil Gupta, MD.
MD,
yeah, who is one of these like spiritual master guru type people. Although he might not allegedly, yeah, although he might not self-identify as such. Apologies, Kapil, if you're listening to this. I mean, Dr. Gupta. So he's written these 2 books, and he's like apparently Naval Ravikant's like guru.
Yeah, and but he's a
Allegedly.
guru to like lots of like very high performing types. And
Yeah,
stuff,
apparently. And so he's written these 2 books. One is called A Master's Secret Whispers, and another one is called Atmamun, which is like reference to some Himalayan tradition of like spiritually enlightened people. And he's written these 2 like fairly accessible books that are very short, that are all about this sort of spiritual journey type stuff. And I tagged him in a tweet when I started reading one of his books, being like, just started reading A Master's Secret Whispers, can't wait to get into it. And he replied, the master himself replied to my tweet saying, "You are probably not ready for this book." And ready was with a capital R. And in fairness, he's probably right.
To this day, that remains the coldest tweet I have ever seen in my life.
Just got absolutely destroyed by this.
So mean.
Absolutely destroyed by this spiritual guru.
Yeah.
So, what can you do?
Oh.
Happily, if you're listening to this, we'd love to have you on the pod. Yeah. But yeah.
Oh. Okay, so the surrender experiment.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll get through it. I'll get through it in the
it's
next few
actually
days.
sick. Yeah. I've got like 5 hours of driving tomorrow, so I can't wait to finish it, and then also start listening to the Untethered Soul. Yeah, this guy's legit. So I think like the cool thing about this, so this was recommended to me by one of my startup bro friends, Dan, who founded Heights. And Dan was like, because he recommended the Power of Now as well. And he said to me that I might vibe better with the Surrender Experiment because, and he didn't quite say this, but I feel like the image I've had of all these spiritual guru type people is that they're sort of hermits who live in the woods. And to then see someone who, for example, became a CEO of a $1 billion company, makes it like, oh, okay, this is actually not just a hermit in the wood type thing. This is actually a thing that like
you can live in the world, and
people who are living in the world are also like doing.
Yeah.
And the Surrender Experiment kind of talks about that story, and it's sick. This is really good.
So does he like? I mean, at the end of this, like, would you feel inspired to start meditation? Like,
yeah, probably.
That's kind of the vibe.
Yeah, probably.
Okay. Yeah.
Or at least to kind of explore this area more. And there was part of me that was kind of thinking, in a very worldly way. Like, I've had my like study arc, I've had my medical arc, I've had my productivity arc.
Yeah.
I'm approaching the sort of being a creator and entrepreneur stuff. I feel like there's a spirituality arc somewhere in there of like kind of abandoning the pursuit of worldly fame and prestige and stuff, and becoming a chap who does the spiritual stuff, but then kind of talks about the spiritual stuff and tries to explain it to people who were like me, the people who have not yet seen. Seen with a capital S. And then once I've seen, then I can become that's in the back of my mind. Is like it would be kind of funny that if
that would be funny. If
that's the sort of
funny pivot.
That's the final evolution. Of Ali Abdaal Limited. Where then I can then sort of have cold replies to people's tweets. When they start reading my books, and we're like, "Nah, mate, start with the productivity one. I don't think you're ready for the spiritual mountain or the journey to the top.
Do my course, then you'll be ready."
Exactly. Once your LTV has exceeded $2,500, at that point you'll be ready.
I think that'd be interesting, man.
Yeah.
But like, so I feel like over the past 6 months, you've probably been like dipping your toe into the. The
Kool-Aid,
the spiritual dimension, if you want to call it that. Has it prompted you to start doing anything, or is it like what's the development so far?
All right, so spiritual development so far. That can be the title for the book, the Shadow Realm.
So you get a reference for those of you who don't know about that one.
So development so far, I mean, I dabbled with about 15 days worth of Sam Harris's Waking Up app, but I didn't really fully get through it. I didn't really particularly vibe with it.
Right.
It's mostly been a lot of reading and not a lot of actually doing the practice. Although my personal trainer Dean is big on the meditation thing.
Yeah.
I mentioned we were vaguely talking about it. He was like, "Oh, you're into meditation, sick." And then so once a week he's offered to kind of pro bono do kind of guided meditation sessions with me.
Okay.
After one of our PT sessions.
Yeah.
So we had one a couple of weeks ago, and it was actually really good. It was like a Wednesday night. We worked out from like 9 till 10 p.m.
Yeah.
And then from 10 till 10:30, he sort of played some music. I sat down in this chair.
Yeah.
And he was sitting where you're sitting, and he was like, close your eyes and just sort of talk to me through kind of relaxing and doing a body scan, which is where you sort of become aware of every bit of your body. And afterwards, I felt like very much at peace.
Really?
Yeah, it was a weird kind of feel. It wasn't like a sort of completely game changing kind of feeling.
Yeah, it wasn't like mental. Yeah.
But it was definitely a feeling of being at peace, a feeling of calm, serenity.
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah, I think he sort of knew what I was feeling, because he was like, "Don't worry, don't say anything. I'm gonna leave.
Yeah.
You have a good night. Take your time. Get up slowly. Drink some water.
Yeah.
Kind of thing." And I felt like I was almost floating in this floating on a almost like cloud of peace and serenity as I was kind of brushing my teeth and drinking some water, and then when I went to bed.
Yeah.
And so we're going to do another one next week.
Did you like sleep pretty nicely or anything?
I sleep pretty well normally, so I didn't notice any difference in the sleep. I just felt this sense of like groundedness and peace and stuff, which was weird because I hadn't had that. But I guess this was 20 minutes long, which is probably the longest I've ever tried to actively meditate.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty solid stuff.
20 minutes is a long time.
It didn't feel that long at all.
Really?
Yeah.
Was it like I'm going to try and not think about anything meditation, or what was it?
It was a, focus on your breath, focus on whatever. I can't even remember what it was, but it was just lots of like focus on your breath as you breathe in, as you breathe out, relax, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But there seemed to be different thingies of like, one of our mutual friends went on a 10-day silent meditation retreat, like Vipassana Meditation, and like, which is a very specific style. There's also like transcendental meditation. There's all these different ways of doing it. The guy in the surrender experiment talks about this other specific one that he discovered through some yoga ananda guy, which involves saying "muh, muh, muh."
Oh, really?
He says in the audiobook, it's quite good. Repeatedly. And then there's this other master chap called Baba comes along and visits, and Baba has like a different like mantra that he uses. And then Baba gives him one of these sort of like ridiculously out of this world experiences where he just sort of touches his head, and suddenly he feels like he's just transported out of his body.
Oh, wow.
And he's like, "Oh my God,
this
guy's proper legit," and has that feeling of like, as soon as he walks into the room, as soon as Baba walks into the room, you can feel the presence.
Yeah.
And everyone's just like enthralled because they can all feel the presence.
Yeah,
There's like an energy in the room. And it's like this. Again, a part of me just wants to dismiss all this as being BS, but so many people from so many different like religions and cultures and traditions and non-religious cultures and traditions have described this kind of experience.
Yeah,
that there's something there. It's just like understanding what it is and what the deal is.
Yeah, man, I really want that too. Let me know if you find a sage.
Yeah, if I find a guru.
Yeah. One of my friends actually had this guru guy, but he died a few years ago. Before I met this friend. Yeah, but it was quite transformative for the friend. Yeah. So, I need to find another group.
Yeah. In Islam, what's the deal with all the spirituality stuff? Is it, my understanding is that it's all like Sufism-y vibes.
Yeah. So, from my understanding, the more like spiritual, mystical leaning side of Islam is known as Sufism.
That's your understanding.
Okay, cool, fair enough. That's my understanding.
Because that was my understanding as well.
Yeah, I mean, people who are into that side of things will, do certain like activities to try and
chanting and singing and stuff.
Yeah, things like chanting, singing, this kind of stuff in like a group.
Yeah.
Even some like dancing. I think
there's
a range
in a lot
of
of different
practices.
traditions as well.
Yeah, so there's a range of practices. But as like a means to get closer to God, like glorifying God and the Prophet and all this kind of stuff, basically. So I mean, I have a very basic level of knowledge about this. I don't. Yeah.
Fair. So if anyone's listening to this and has any recommendations for what Tame and I can use to start dipping more than just our toes into the spiritual path, spiritual waters, do leave a comment on the YouTube video for this episode, please. That would be lovely. And we'll take a look at the stuff. But yeah, I want to explore more of this Michael, whatever his surname is. Michael Can't remember. But yeah, sick. Surrender Experiment. And then The Untethered Soul is going to be next.
Yeah. So the whole kind of meditation thing, what do you see as like the end goal? It's like, are you chasing the peaceful feeling? What are you like?
So
what are you chasing?
To quote Alan Watts on this topic, meditation is the only activity in the world that's done without an end goal.
Nice. Yeah.
It's like the only thing that you do purely for the sake of doing the thing, allegedly.
Okay, but right now you're not meditating and you want to meditate.
Correct.
So
yeah.
What is your goal?
Okay, fine. You got me. Right now, my goal is to understand what people are talking about when they say they have a transcendental experience.
Yeah.
Or when they say that they feel that voice in their head has been silenced, or that voice in their head is they've dissociated from the self.
Yeah.
And I think very occasionally, a couple calls these glimpses with a capital G.
Yeah.
Very, very occasionally when I'm reading the right sort of book.
Yeah.
Or then I will have even earlier today while I was listening to Surrender Experiment as I was walking to the studio, I had a bit of a glimpse of this sort of feeling of, hey, the self is not a thing, and I'm actually one with the rest of the world or something for like literally a millisecond.
Right.
And then sort of snapped straight back into my usual egoic self.
Yeah.
And so I kind of, having listened to a bunch of podcasts and read a bunch of books about this, know what that thing is that people are describing, but I wouldn't say I've ever experienced it.
Okay.
And so partly, if psychedelics get you to the top of the mountain, meditation is like the slow way up the mountain.
Yeah, sure.
But obviously, it seems ideal to try and get to those sorts of states without needing drugs.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah,
because drugs are bad.
Yes, because drugs bad.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's the goal for now.
Okay.
Just sort of to explore more around that side of life and understand more about it and see what the hell is going on here.
Yeah.
Like, why is these things have been around for thousands of years.
Yeah.
But then I think like there's other things that have been around for traditional Chinese medicine has been around for thousands of years and is still practiced to this day, and there are still TCM practitioners all around the world.
Okay.
And it's like the medical profession would look on TCM as being like a bit like sort of bordering on quackery.
Does it produce results?
I mean, people would say, well, when they do double-blinded placebo-controlled trials of this kind of stuff, I mean, there are some things that we know that do work, like the bark of the whatever willow tree that produces the acid that's in aspirin is obviously going to work. But other stuff, it's like there's a bunch of like herbs and a bunch of spices that allegedly cure various things. I don't know much about this, but I just know that in mainstream medical profession, it's sort of looked down on as being alternative medicine / quackery type stuff. Yeah. And that's been around for a long time and people swear by it. And
it's Lindy, mate. It's Lindy.
There's clearly something there. Yeah. And so like once I feel like a lot of these things are somewhat adjacent in the fact that Western scientific method has not quite figured out what's going on here. Yeah. And therefore, as a productivity bro, it's easy to dismiss these sorts of things. Yeah. But then it also seems like sort of the extreme productivity bros are also the Burning Man kind of. So it's almost like this loop. Oh, I spent some time watching the Alex Jones coverage.
Oh yeah, what's going on with this? I've seen the memes.
Oh, there's memes.
Yeah.
Nice.
There's the meme is like a picture of him just like turning around like that and like just kind of like being like, wait, what is this kind of thing? And people do different captions. So what's the deal?
Okay, so do you know who Alex Jones is?
I know he's this like conspiracy theory kind of guy.
Yeah, so I thought he was just some like young kid. Because I'd never seen like what he looked like up until this, like literally earlier today. Yeah. When I saw all the trial stuff coming out, I was like, oh wow, this is old, kind of fat man. Okay, kind of vibes. Yeah, but he's sort of, and I think Rogan had him on like once on his pod, and loads of people wanted to cancel Rogan for that.
Oh, really?
And then this chap was on YouTube, but then I think YouTube sort of cancelled him and took him off the platform or something. Okay, and that was like a big thing a few years ago. But anyway, there was this Sandy Hook school shooting in America. The Sandy Hook massacre, and Alex Jones, and I can't remember what year this was, but it was sort of 5+ years ago, I think. Alex Jones basically was like, yeah, it's all a bit of a hoax, and the parents who are crying about the dead kids are all like actresses and actors. Wow. And it's all fake news. Yeah. And he would talk about this openly on the internet, and it's just like it's pretty freaking insane. Like seeing the footage where he's sort of making fun of these parents and like sort of doing bits.
Do you think it's an act? Or do you think he like buys it?
I think his thing is he's basically said that every major thing that's happened in the last sort of decade is a conspiracy theory.
Okay.
And then as he drinks his own Kool-Aid, I suspect, and as his fans tell him that he's like the best person in the world, he starts to buy into this and becomes more and more and more and more extreme.
Okay.
Because then that's just the kind of guy that he is. But anyway, so parents of these kids who died sued him for defamation. Because the stuff he was saying was leading, and his fans were like going after the parents. He like leaked their addresses, and they would like go. And one of the families had to move house 7 times and were now in hiding because Alex Jones fans were just like coming after them wherever they lived. It's just completely insane.
What the hell?
It's like hard to believe that this shit actually happens in real life.
Okay.
And then this chap, so they sued him, and then there's this sort of discovery phase where he's supposed to hand over like documents and stuff, and he never responded to that. And then the courts were like, you can't just not respond to this. Like, you know, you're being sued, so you have to actually give us documents. He didn't respond to that. So eventually he lost that case by default. He defaulted the judgment, which like never happens. Like, so the lawyers were like, yeah, this is like a unicorn. Like, it's literally not a thing. But he was just like so in contempt of court that he lost the defamation case by default. And therefore he is by definition guilty. And then the only thing that was remaining was what the damages amount was going to be.
Yeah.
So he can't now dispute that he's actually guilty of this thing because he lost by default by virtue of not showing up.
Wait, how long did he not show up?
Oh, years. Yeah. Like he didn't hand over documents for years.
I love it. You got to respect that. Come on, look.
And so the parents are going for like $150 million in damages. And so now the case that's happening is that it's basically trying to argue how much that amount of damages should be. But crucially, there's this like banger moment from the trial. My mate Devin, who runs a YouTube channel called Legal Eagle, has like some sick videos like breaking this down. There are sort of 2 million views in like 2 days where he's just sort of, as a lawyer, is breaking down and showing the footage. Because this is the kind of cool thing about that American, they televise.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You know the Johnny and Amber stuff.
Yeah.
Seems to be televised on a live stream YouTube channel.
Yeah.
What the hell?
Yeah.
Also, the FBI seemed to have a YouTube channel where they were going to unbox Trump's stuff from the raid.
Oh, really?
Don't know if you heard about this.
No.
I don't know how much fake news this was, but apparently the FBI were going to live
unboxing.
on YouTube.
Wow.
But anyway, that's a side note. So there was this moment in the trial where the prosecution's, or whatever the plaintiff, like I don't know what the word is, but the prosecution's lawyer had Alex Jones on the stand, and was like, "Hey, so you testified that you gave us all of the text messages you had relating to the Sandy Hook massacre," and he was like, "Yes," and you were like, "And you sure you didn't have any more?" And he was like, "Yeah." I was like, are you like really sure about that?"
Yeah.
He was like, "Yeah," and he was like, "All right, I want to show you this. What is this?" And he's like, "Shit, it's a text message talking about the Sandy Hook massacre," where he basically sort of talks to one of his mates about it, and then he's like, "Huh. What's going on?" And then Alex Jones is like, "Shit," because how did this guy get hold of this like text message? And then the lawyer sort of tees him up and is like activates all the trap cards.
Oh yeah.
And he basically turns out that Alex's lawyers had accidentally sent a Dropbox link to the prosecution containing 300 gigabytes of like text messages that had been on Alex's phone for the last like 2-3 years. Yeah. This was all stuff that they were actively hiding from the prosecution, pretending they didn't have any of this data.
Oh, wow.
Which is like illegal itself because you have to hand over the relevant documents.
Okay.
And one of the lawyers is paralegals or something accidentally sent a Dropbox link over. And then the prosecution lawyer replied immediately being like, looks like this was sent in error. And the guy, the lawyer replied, "Oh yeah, please disregard this." Yeah. And then didn't really do anything with it. And now there's this whole thing where the lawyer has then been like, sorry, you know, it was their fault. Like they knew that this was sent in error, and like I told them to disregard it. And they didn't delete the files. And the guy's like, bro, you know, if you wanted us to not have this, you would have had to file this, and this, and therefore, like, given that you didn't object to it, it's like we're going to use the material. Yeah. And then the guy's like, "No, judge, sorry, we want a mistrial. Like, this is unfair. It's like we accidentally gave him the link." And the judge is like, "Look, you should have given it to them 3 years ago. I'm not going to stand for this.
Yeah.
And so this was like the ultimate "you've activated my trap card" moment, where Alex Jones's lawyers accidentally sent a Dropbox link, completely destroys him. And so now all of the media uproar could be like, it's kind of funny.
Oh my god!
Because I think if ever there were like a villain, it's like with the Johnny Depp Amber Heard. It's like, even though the internet seemed to be against Amber Heard, it's like, compared to the amount of people hate Alex Jones, it's like not even comparable.
This is a guy we can all get behind.
We can all get behind. This guy's a total twat. But
wow. Yeah, I'd heard. I saw something on Twitter about like his lawyer sending the text messages.
Yeah.
And I couldn't quite piece together the story.
Yeah, legally, I
ridiculous.
spent half an hour in bed watching videos about this.
Really?
Yeah, it's sick.
Oh wow, nice.
Legal Eagle has like fantastic coverage of this.
Okay, I'll start poking around Alex Jones because I've just seen him face so many times on the memes. You can't help but like the guy.
Yeah,
he just looks so shocked.
Yeah. No, Alex.
So I found the graph.
Oh yeah.
I found it by going through a guy's likes, who I thought, this guy's definitely like this.
Who is it? It's not
a guy called Nick Camerata.
Oh, okay. You found the graph. What is the graph?
Rat. Okay, so on the y-axis, it is. Oh, I think this is from Astral Codex. The y-axis is vulnerability to woo, and on the x-axis is intellectual sophistication. So look, this is clearly right.
Cancelable.
Yeah. No, not cancelable, but like, all right. So on the x-axis, the least intellectual sophistication is normal people with common sense.
Okay.
And low vulnerability to woo. Okay. And then as you get a bit more intellectually sophisticated, as you get to Midwit Mountain, your vulnerability to woo increases. How should I agree with this?
I feel like
okay, yeah.
I feel like it's more like a bell curve.
Yeah, well, and then it kind of goes down again, and then the next step is the atheist scientific materialists. But materialists, not in the sense of like liking designer brands, but in the sense of like not believing that there's anything outside of the physical world. There's no, there's only physical matter,
a spiritual or a cognitive realm.
Yeah. So then, after you graduate from Midwit Mountain, you become an atheist scientific materialist, and then you have very low vulnerability to woo. And then the evolution past that is you become a post-rationalist, and then you have like really high vulnerability to woo. Because I think a lot of like post-rat Twitter.
Post-rat?
Post-rationalist.
Oh, right, okay.
A lot of people are getting into this kind of stuff, and like on the extreme end. And this guy like Nick Camerata is on the extreme end. Yeah, it's basically getting into this kind of territory of like, we are all one. Like, really just it seems like materialism has kind of been in the water for a while, and I think that it seems intuitive to most people today.
Right.
This idea that like there's nothing outside of the physical realm. Okay. And it seems like the people on the extreme end of like this pipeline are actually becoming very like anti-materialist after like having gone through that. So I think we may be in for a correction where maybe, I don't know, maybe like 20 years from now or something, what would seem intuitive is like not materialism or something. Okay, yeah, let's talk about that in another episode, because this Nick guy, look, I might be wrong, so sorry if like anyone listening, sorry if Nick is listening or anyone who knows him is listening. The impression I get is that in the past like 1 to 2 years, maybe 2 to 3 years or something, this guy's gotten super into like the meditation thing. He's like an AI researcher as a job and stuff.
Of course he is.
And super into like meditation. Says the word qualia a lot. And he did some tweets basically saying like, look, the more I like go down this rabbit hole, the more the case for there being some immaterial stuff, the more that just becomes like abundantly clear or something. And like, this is a very like, I think I get the impression he has gone through that pipeline of being like a scientist, not in the sense of like practicing science, but in the sense of like a believer in scientism. That like scientific method is the only way of like getting knowledge and empirical data, all this kind of stuff, right? I feel like he's gone through that. I feel like he tweeted some stuff around like some like scientific, angle that provides in his view like really strong evidence that like there is the immaterial. So it's something like that. So I'll dig up the tweets. My view so far has been like this guy seems a bit extreme. Like he's always going on about like qualia and how like
the hell is qualia?
Yeah, I don't know.
Right, okay.
It's just like it's like a unit of experience or something.
Okay.
It's just like
Fine.
Ability to experience in the abstract.
Good.
And I think like he seems to have made his life goal to like, he's like, wow, like why is everyone not trying to find some technology that can just like drip feed us qualia or something, just like,
Sure.
Yeah, this kind of thing. How do we go into this? Oh yeah, the woo stuff. Anyway, yeah, so I think there's a clear resurgence of like woo stuff, like spirituality and all this kind of thing. Even within the extreme like rationalist scientific community, there does seem to be an uprise.
Nice.
Yeah, anyway, we really had better wrap up there.
Yes. Thank you everyone for
It's
listening.
almost midnight.
And
We'll see you next time.
see you next time. Bye-bye.